Hello, I just stopped my Under the Flag recording. I hope you go and watch that. I'm going to be doing all the Fad Gadget albums eventually, and I'm moving right along to his fourth and final album. This is Frank Tovey's project, Fad Gadget, and this is his fourth album, Gag. His fourth unbelievably beautiful album, Gag. This came out in 1984. That's right. And I'll repeat this ever so briefly because I want people to know this who watch my channel, because a lot of people who watch my channel love Ministry and love Depeche Mode and things like that. You need to know this artist if you like those artists. You just do. Trust me, you do. You will thank me later, especially early Ministry. Early Ministry fans, you will love this. It's got that feel. If you like With Sympathy, if you like Halloween and All Day, Work for Love, that kind of stuff, you should check this out. This is even more intense than early Ministry. Early Ministry can be very intense. This is even more so. Fad Gadget, Gag. A lot of Fad Gadget fans, I think, treat this album as their favorite. I would not argue with those fans. In fact, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Some days it's Fireside favorites, other days it's Gag. It just depends. Lately, it's actually been Gag. This has been my favorite Fad Gadget album of late. This is one of those albums that sneaks up on you, man. When I first heard this, I don't know, as I've mentioned in my prior Fad Gadget videos, I was too young to be into this when it was coming out at the time. I'd love to hear from people out there who watch this, who were old enough to be listening to this in its day. I would love to hear from you guys. If you're out there, please comment. I would love to get your take on what this sounded in its time when it came out. Like if you got this the week it came out, I'd love to hear your opinions on this. I didn't hear this until, 89, 90. I was just a toddler when this stuff was coming out. But when I heard it, 7, 8, 9 years after it had come out, this album was a little harder for me to get into at the time. Fireside Favorites was a very visceral experience, very in your face, you could tell Frank Tovey had a mission. Lots of aggression. It was an easy album to love immediately. This album is not easy to get into. At least it wasn't for me, but this is an album you have to let wash over you. You have to let it kind of consume you. And once it does, man, it takes a hold hard. This is a fucking great album. Gag. One of the finest 80s albums in the new wave or whatever genre that you can bring up. I think Gag is up there with the very best of them. This is on Mute. I will always mention that. Daniel Miller's label. And this was produced by Gareth Jones. Gareth Jones. You Depeche Mode fans probably know that name. If you don't, you should. He worked with Erasure. Any artist on Mute. Eric Radcliffe had stuff to do with this. He was producing and mixing on the singles too. I'll bring that up. These are names you need to know if you like the world of Mute in the 80s, especially. But Gareth Jones produced this, and Gareth Jones is responsible for some of the best Depeche Mode remixes that ever came down the pike. Same with Erasure. Those bands were all fans of this man right here. This is another photo that he did this in his live shows. He'd kind of tar and feather himself. I wish I was old enough to have seen him in this day. I'd love to hear from you if you did. And in fact, my Frank Tovey video I put out a few months ago, there were one or two people that reached out to me that said they saw him live in the 80s. If there are more of you, or if you commented before, I'd love for you to comment again. I would have loved to have seen him back in these days. As I have mentioned in my other Frank Tovey videos, I won't go on too long about it, but he died in 2001. He was only 45, way too young. He had a lot more to say. But this is a very deep album, man. It was hard for me to grasp this when it first came out. It does have the more traditional, I don't know, new wave techno pop stuff that he would do. But this is deeper. And I don't just mean musically, but lyrically. He had a lot of important things to say on this record. And it ebbs and flows perfectly. There's really not a bad song on here. Every song is excellent. Just very different music. Frank Tovey was on a different plane, man. This record, it only came with an inner sleeve, a generic inner sleeve, no lyrics. Not sure why he did that. His other records, some of his other records had lyrics, but this one did not. There's the label. These records need to be reissued too, man. Like, of all the shit they reissue, I don't know why they don't reissue these Frank Tovey records. Seriously, maybe just people don't know enough about Fad Gadget. That's a big reason why I'm doing these videos. I want people to know this. This is a man who's been long dead, who makes a lot of sense in these days. I don't want to go off on this too much again. I just went off on this on the Under the Flag video. But I feel like the world is just it's too content to be boring. Too content to be ordinary. This man, his whole career was dedicated to not being boring, to not being ordinary, but to be extraordinary. That's everything he did. Everything he did. Hugely influential. One of those unsung heroes, in my opinion. And that's why I'm doing these videos. I want people to know about this guy. His music has been really hitting me hard lately. You know, when you read the news and you see how excited people are to celebrate mediocrity day in and day out, you need people like this to exist. Even though he's dead, he still exists to me, and he always will. And Gag, yeah, arguably his best album. Many Frank Tovey fans think this is his best. Out of Fad Gadget, out of Frank Tovey, everything he ever did, under any name. There are a lot of people who think this is his best record, and I wouldn't argue with them. This is a beautiful, glorious piece of work. Gag. And you don't need to buy the record. It's out on Apple Music. If you subscribe to Apple Music, go download it, go upload it, go whatever you need to do it. Go add it to your collection. Go add it to your catalog. It's there. I checked. All Fad Gadget records, his compilations, they're all there. Get lost in the beauty of this right here. Gag. All right. Here is an excellent 12-inch that was released from this album, Collapsing New People. You get a phenomenal remix from none other than Daniel Miller on it. I think it's Daniel Miller, right? I could swear it's Daniel Miller. Yes, Daniel Miller. Do I need to remind you who Daniel Miller is? I hope not. Nice long extended mix here too, man. Yes. You fans of that early mid 80s mute Depeche Mode sound, if you haven't heard this, God, treat yourself. Excellent stuff. Daniel Miller is one of those guys, I just think that he's never done anything that's boring. Even if he does something that you don't necessarily like, at least it's not boring, you know? Here are the labels. Nothing too exciting. The labels, that is. The music is very exciting. And the versions are a lot different, so it's worth picking this up. It's not just some half-assed re-edit of the album version where you get like an extra minute of beats or something. No, these are different mixes. Check this out. And then this is the other single. This is One Man's Meat. Again, fantastic 12-inch. And you get an electro version of, in my opinion, the best song on the whole damn album, Sleep. Daniel Miller does an electro version of Sleep, and God, it's good. Jesus, so good. That's my personal favorite song on the album. I really don't, I mean, I want to tell you guys enough about the album in a way that incites your curiosity to listen to it, but I don't want to give too much away. I want you guys to be surprised and discover it on some level on your own. I don't want to describe it too much. But it sounds like Fad Gadget in that it's his typical delivery. The music is kind of like earlier stuff, but it's much deeper. It's much more expansive, the sound. Gareth Jones really took his sound. I always thought Fad Gadget, his sound was a little insular. It was a little claustrophobic on the first three records, but then Gag, it kind of expands a little bit. Still claustrophobic, but it has more room. It's bouncing off the walls a little bit more. It's more sonic. Gareth Jones really kind of took it to the next level. And I always wish that he had done another Fad Gadget album just to see where it would have taken him. Because his albums all kind of evolved from Fireside Favorites up to Gag. It would have been nice to see what he could do post Gag, but we never got to find out. Excellent 12-inch. Get it for the sleep version. The Daniel Miller remix is worth picking this up alone. But Gag. These times need artists like this. It doesn't matter if they're alive or dead, in my opinion. Artists like this need to be kept alive by just letting them wash over us, appreciating what they can give us even long after they're dead. And Fad Gadget's just one of those guys that I think is criminally ignored and just not known about. People don't know this guy. Check him out. We need more individuality in these times, and it doesn't get more individual than this man right here. And Gag arguably is the best thing he ever did. Again, I think Fireside Favorites is right there. It's neck and neck with Gag. They're so close. It just depends on the mood. But this is, I think, and arguably this is his deepest work. This is the record. You know those albums where you listen to them and you're like you don't know quite what to do with it at first. Maybe you're not in the right headspace, but there's a couple of things that catch your ear, that catch your interest, and then you return to it later and you're like, oh yeah. And then it gets better, and then you listen to it a third and a fourth and a fifth time, and all of a sudden it just clicks. You're like, oh my God, yes. That's what this album is, at least for me. A very heady, deep, sophisticated piece of work from a very sophisticated man, Frank Tovey. Fad Gadget Gag. Check this out. All right, thanks. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.